Albie here from Spirit for Spirits, welcoming you back behind the stick. Alternate sweeteners. Now, we've talked about how liqueurs can be used, a regular simple syrup, even how we can manipulate some of the things in simple syrup to create things. But there's a million other sweeteners out there that also go really well with our cocktails. I've picked up a bunch along the way. Some were gifts, some you can find in your local store. We do another little segment called Locally Sourced, and we were lucky enough to stop in Vermont at the Woods Maple Syrup company, and Al Wood just really took care of us. Big shout out to Al. So one of the elements that I picked up there, and one of my favorites to mix into an old fashioned actually, is this maple syrup that is hickory and oak smoke. Forget about it. Just adding all these different elements of, as we learned earlier, that the bourbon and the rye have already been in torched oak. This just creates such a through line for us to bring smoky elements with the richness of this beautiful maple syrup. Take that element and he goes one step further, and Al brings me this beautiful thing called Ghosted, where he put ghost peppers in his maple syrup, and now I have another element to really pump up the spiciness of rye grain, just really make things start to explode with some really cool sweeteners. Next to that, as everybody has in their house somewhere, I know there's a honey bear. I know there is. You'll see honey syrup come into play in a lot of classics, things like maybe a bee's knees. I also use it a lot with Scotch or with Irish whiskey, as their flavor profiles lean a little bit more towards hay, honey, and straw, things that are a bit lighter. Pro tip on this one, you can't put honey as it is in a cold cocktail. It'll just get hard and get solid, so you've got to make syrup out of it first. You do a 1-to-1 the same way you do a regular simple syrup and make that 1-to-1. Next pro tip, honey, which stays on its own for a very long time, will lose its shelf life once the sugars start to break down when you make it into a syrup. So also be careful with that. A couple other really cool things that we've learned along the way is to stop at roadsides and pick up some stuff. I found some really cool little roadsides along the way, and I picked up one of my favorites. This is a sour cherry jam that I got along the way that I just really, really adored. Some really cool stuff that I start to mix into some sours and things like that. But my overall favorite, and I really recommend this to everybody, I'm sure you've got someone local who jams and jars their own stuff. I fell in love with starting to use jams, and of course this shout goes to my sister Melissa and her husband Kevin, who do all their own jarring and pickling and all this stuff, and we get so many jars. But one of my favorites that they do, this is a blueberry and rhubarb jam. Of course, rhubarb has not only that deep red rich flavor profile to it, a little touch of earth, but that beautiful bitter finish on it, in addition to the sweet and tartness of jam with blueberry. This just created a really wonderful element that I'm able to put into something like an egg white sour. I give it this beautiful creamy texture. I have all those sweet and tart elements together with that light rhubarb bitter finish. I challenge you to get a whole bunch of these things together, the things in your house. What other sweeteners do you have around that you might want to use? And after you've created something beautiful, of course, we've got to make it look beautiful in the glass as well. But we'll talk about garnishes another time behind the stick.